we listen to this born leader and achiever. Let's put our hands together for our keynote speaker, Mr. Seth.
Seth's turn. Wow. You know you made it when you're the only student in the VIP table. It's crazy. Look at this. Amazing.
Good evening, everyone. Nice to be back. Nice to see a lot of faces that I haven't seen ever since before the pandemic. I've only been here a couple times ever since the pandemic. But before that, I was here for a far longer time. And I'd like to thank the admin for inviting me to speak here tonight. And yeah, it's really a big privilege and honor. So, without further ado, here is my life story. Get ready for the next 2 hours. Joke lang. 15 minutes, mga 15 minutes lang naman, don't worry. Actually, I was asking when Ma'am Sarah was telling me, okay, Seth, you can please prepare a speech. It doesn't have to be too long, maybe around 4 or 5 minutes. Sabi ko, Ma'am, can it be a little longer than that? I have a lot more to tell. Sabi niya, okay, wag lang 30 minutes. Okay, mga 15, that'll do. Actually started writing this around December pa, ever since we saw GCA's most successful NSC team in history in our many years of joining. They went to Davao, they came, they saw, they conquered, and I started writing this speech around this time when I was invited to come speak here tonight.
No one clapped.
Anyway, without further ado, here is my story. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I will be talking about losing. Something that every NSC delegate and anyone who's competed anywhere else has felt at one point or another. I'm here to talk about how you can prepare with all your might and lose. How you can practice for months upon months and lose. How you can be the most committed you've ever been and lose. How you can pray to God every single night for just one win and still lose. In my 4 years of high school competing at the ACE student conventions as a GCA student, that was 3 NSCs and 1 ISC, the virtual one during the pandemic. That's all I knew, felt, and experienced. However, tonight, I will be talking about purpose. How, in spite of everything, there still lies an underlying plan for it all. Tonight, you will know about how I found purpose behind my defeats. Now, it all began at the NSCs, of course. One of the biggest blessings in my life was the opportunity to participate at the ACE student conventions. Where else can 1 week last a lifetime? In particular, God allowed me to join 1 junior student convention, 5 national student conventions, and 3 international student conventions as a GCA student and then as a PCST student afterwards. As with every competition, my fellow teammates and I always joined with the intent to win. Of course, we'd also join to travel and have fun and make new friends, and maybe try to find people we wanted to be more than friends with. But winning was always the ultimate goal. My first attempt was at NSC 2017. Unlike my JSC days when I competed without much thought towards winning, here at the silver anniversary of the NSCs, I joined to win. In particular, I was incredibly hopeful for one event, chess. In fact, I was so overconfident this NSC that I barely paid any attention to my other events. Chess was in my mind, the way that I would win. At that time, I was beating my lolo in chess, I was beating my teachers, I was beating my friends, I thought I was some prodigy, I thought I was some grandmaster in the making, I thought I was so good. I had no doubt that I'd win. We're at the NSC, the competition room, and I lose at game 1. Eliminated from the standings. I went home empty-handed that NSC. But it was fine, it was my first NSC naman. My baptism as of fire per se. Next year, I said to myself, we'll try again. The next year came and I returned to NSC 2018 with more events, more preparations, more expectations, and more vigor and ambition. Aside from chess, I joined Famous Speech, my signature event since my JSC days. And by the time of the convention in Rojas, I had memorized and mastered my piece to the best of my abilities. Unlike 2017, I was actually hopeful about winning. I thought it was realistic. I didn't think I was overconfident anymore. I looked forward to and waited for it. But despite an entire year's worth of anticipation, practice, and growth since NSC 2017, still, I failed to place. Most of my entries had even failed to reach the top 15. Even my main event, famous speech, hadn't placed at all. No matter, I once again told myself, next year, we'll be back. Next year will be our year. Unbeknownst to me, NSC 2019 in Vegan would be my last as a GCA-AN, and it would mark as my NSC with the most joined events, a staggering 12, or the maximum number allowed at the student conventions. As the rally nights came and went that NSC, and as we performed one event after the other, time and again, our events would be awarded. On deck! Radio program, essay writing, poetry writing, they'd all be awarded, and GCA wouldn't be called. Not once. By Thursday night, the eve of the final awarding rally, 10 of my 12 events had already been awarded, and still, we had no medals. Still, I held no medals in my hands nor felt any of their weights around my neck. Sometime past midnight, I was curled up in my bed and dying to see tomorrow. Feeling hopeless, I prayed to God with all my fervor and piety. Lord, please let me win just this once. Lord, I want this. You know I want this. You know how much I've worked for this. So please, let me win. Just please let me go home with one medal, and I'll be the happiest delegate in Vegan. I cried as I prayed, as if I already knew that I would not be answered. The next day, my last two events, famous speech and poetry recitation, were awarded. Still, I wasn't called. As we got our certificates, I found that famous speech hadn't even placed in the top 15. Nothing. I had joined 12 events that NSC, and not one had managed to reach the top 6. And only 3 even reached the top 15. What even is the point? There I was, one of the most enthusiastic delegates out there, and I wasn't winning anywhere. Meanwhile, first-timers were joining and winning left and right. What did it all mean? What would it all add up to? I didn't know. I just determined to doing better the following year. I remained hopeful, and after the initial disappointment had faded, I chose my speech for NSC 2020 and began memorizing it one day after NSC 2019 had finished. I was still in Vegan when I started memorizing my speech for the next NSC. NSC 2020, set to be held in Iloilo, would be my last as a GCA student, and maybe even my last ever. At this time, I wasn't even sure if I would be enrolled at an ACE school for senior high school. I was determined to make it count. We all know what happened next. The pandemic hit, and all hopes for that NSC vanished. After graduating junior high school at GCA, I was enrolled at the Philippine Christian School of Tomorrow for senior high. Since I was still at an ACE school, I could join 2 more NSCs, but at that point, I had lost some of my GCA ambition. I became a little more realistic, sticking to my strengths instead of joining 12 events and hoping one of them would stick. So, at the virtual 2021 NSC, my main event this time was radio program, the one event that had consistently been showing promise since Vegan. It had placed 8th in Vegan and 12th at the virtual ISC that we joined as GCA. I formed a team, wrote a script, we recorded our lines, we edited it all together, and submitted our entry. Then, the wait. Aside from this, I also joined essay writing and a number of photography events. I didn't even join famous speech this year. Some other student, a grade higher than me, joined that at BCST. Then, the NSC awarding live streams began in early December 2021, and I was, of course, nervous but remained hopeful. Then, our main event started to be called. radio program. On deck, they started calling one school after another. They even called Great Christian Academy at that time. And then the unimaginable happened. Philippine Christian School of Tomorrow on deck. Our entry had placed in the top 6. I cried tears of joy when that was announced and infinitely thanked God for His grace. Finally, after years of trying, I left an NSC with a medal. I felt like the happiest person on earth. I was ecstatic, but God wasn't done with me yet. Afterwards, we joined ISC 2022, the International Student Convention. Basically, that's where all the winners of the NSC and all the other student conventions around the world come to compete with one another. And after that convention, I walked away with not 1, not 2, but 3 medals and a championship. All of a sudden, this rush of victory after victory was engulfing me. I couldn't be more grateful. Then, in my final year in high school, we joined NSC 2022. I walked away from that convention with 6 medals, including, finally, after year of getting no place, no top 6, no top 10, no top 15, nothing at all, I walked away from that NSC with a famous speech championship. Then, I closed my journey with the AC Student Conventions with ISC 2023, where again, around last year, I walked away with 3 medals and a defended championship. To this I say, Soli Deo Gloria and Soli Deo Gloria forevermore. After all those years of defeat, followed by defeat, finally God allowed me to taste victory. Still, I wondered why those defeats were necessary. What was the purpose behind it all? Could I not have grown with a few victories sprinkled there? Wouldn't I still be the man I am today, maybe even a better one, had I won a few of my events in 2017 or 2018 or 2019? I didn't know. It was a case of God shrouded in His mystery. One night in December 2023 led me to realize that this mystery was in fact wisdom. Last December, during the NSC in Davao, I daily watched the awarding rallies, keeping a close eye on who won what, since I had many friends and former colleagues competing there, the GCA and BCSC teams included. Then, after one of the rally nights, I was about to prepare for bed, and I received a message from a delegate I had neither met nor spoken to before. It was his first NSC in Davao. And apparently he had been watching some of my YouTube videos before that, but this was the first time that we chatted directly. Paraphrase, his message read, "Hi Seth, I'm feeling very disappointed right now because I lost in all my platform events. I just went from being a JSC command performer to being a total loser. How do I deal with this grief? I did all I could in famous speech. He joined the same event as me. And now so many people are disappointed in me. The reason I reached out to you is because you're a master of platform events. How have you been through this before?" Reading that message on my own in our living room that night, my heart broke for him. Here was a young person who was joining his very first NSC with all these high hopes, especially after his JSC victories, and now he was losing in all of his events. The pain, frustration, and disappointment must have been immeasurable. Reading his message, I saw myself in Rojas, in Vigan, wondering just why I was experiencing a defeat and not a victory in spite of all of my dedication, passion, and preparations. I saw myself all those years ago praying and crying to God, begging Him for the win. What this delegate was going through was exactly what I had gone through. I knew and felt his pain and disappointment. It broke my heart. Before replying, I took some time to reflect on his message. And that's when it hit me. The purpose behind it all. Now, I still don't know if this was what I had in mind, what He willed for me to lose in Rojas and Vigan. But very least, this was one of the purposes: to comfort and console and encourage this delegate. Maybe, just maybe, one of the reasons why I was allowed to lose all those times was what I did face a situation exactly like this. When another younger delegate would come to me for advice after losing himself, and when I would be able to tell him with all my heart, mic change? I'd be able to tell him, saan na tayo? Ayun. I'd be able to tell him with all my heart that yes, I knew what he was feeling. I understood it, I felt it, and I was able to stand back up after encountering the same defeat. Maybe God allowed me to lose so badly so that whenever anyone could come to me with their own losses, I'd be able to meet them in their lowest point and encourage them to stand back up. So, I took the time to tell this delegate the story that I have just told you all tonight. How before all my wins, I was the NSC's biggest loser. And how through it all, I pushed on and on and on until I had reached the light at the end of the tunnel. His next message put a smile on my face. He told me he was feeling just a little better, enough to keep his head held high for whatever the future might bring. All thanks to the story I told him about all those times I had lost. Had I known in Rojas and Vegan that this would have been the result of my losses, then my prayer might not have been, Lord, let me win. Instead, it might have been, Lord, let me lose. Because if losing can help someone else that much, then I'd happily do it again. Purpose can be a hazy thing. We have our own plans, yes, but God's plans are just so much bigger and grander than anything we can possibly imagine that oftentimes they seem like lunacy. Then, slowly the pieces begin to come together and we begin to see the picture a little more clearly. Indeed, Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for good. I believe that. I believe that today, many of your problems and setbacks may seem confusing or downright purposeless. But trust me, one day, you'll see the purpose behind it. You'll see the light at the end of that tunnel. And if you don't see the purpose for those difficulties and those defeats in your life, maybe you'll see the purpose in someone else's life. My final message is this. Stay the course, keep the faith, and whenever you face a defeat, remember Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 1. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. Lastly, I would like to read a quote by James Martin that has resonated with me ever since I set my eyes upon it. The most grateful pilgrim is the one who has finished the longest journey. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Maraming salamat at mabuhay.
Well done, well done. One of
Thank
the
you for
greatest
that
speeches.
Thank you, Seth,
I've
for that
ever
uplifting
witnessed.
message.
Amazing.
May we request you to please join us once again here on